And so how do you all keep the passion and the intimacy alive in your relationship?
Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and each week we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
Christine and Bret Eartheart are the driving force behind the Center for Thriving Relationships, which has been helping couples build strong relationships for over 10 years. Through their work, they have been able to provide guidance and assistance to thousands of people, helping them to resolve disagreements, foster meaningful connections, and develop healthy, loving relationships. Christine and Bret provide a comprehensive approach to relationship counseling that combines both the scientific and emotional aspects of healthy relationships. Their services include weekend retreats, online courses, and private consultations, serving clients from all over the world. Christine and Bret designed the Thriving Relationship Coach Certification Program to educate and equip aspiring coaches for a successful career and helping couples achieve meaningful growth and transformation. Christine is also the host of the Thriving Relationship Show, and both she and Bret are dedicated to exploring the vast topic of love and how to make it flourish for more couples. Join us as we pull back the curtain and learn how this kick-ass couple model a thriving relationship that has been intentionally built to last. Welcome to the Kick-Ass Couples Podcast. We are excited to have a fantastic couple that is doing amazing work. We have Christine and Bret Eartheart with us today. Welcome to the Kick-Ass Couples Podcast.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for having us and for all you do.
Oh, we appreciate it. We're learning, and we're fellow workers in the vineyard. So we're all out there tilling and working, and it's fun to hear somebody else that's doing fantastic work like the two of you. And so, Bret, I'm going to start off by asking you the question: what do you think makes you and Christine a kick-ass couple?
I really think it's because we do the work. Our story is a lot like everyone else's in that, like, we first fell in love and it was like blissful and euphoric and it was so easy and like there's just like nothing there but ecstatic joy and great connection and then a couple of years into our relationship, like, it started to get really hard and we realized that we were no longer bringing out the best in each other. And we were so practiced at doing our individual personal growth at that point that we realized that, there's in the couple's dynamic, right? There's like a different skill set that we need to learn. And if we're kind of willing to like get passionate about this and, really go all in and kind of do the work on ourselves, on our relationship, like we did on ourselves, that then we could have an amazing relationship. And so that's exactly what we did. And we realized, it's like, we got to do the work, right, to create a great relationship. And we maintain doing that work, right? Like we do also the maintenance and the continued growth. So I would say that's what makes the difference.
And it's a realization that even though you're doing the personal work, that we have to do the hard work together, the work that requires both of us to be full in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Kimberly. Yeah.
Great. How about you, Christine? What do you think makes you and Brett a kick-ass couple? What would you add to that?
Well, it's such a fun question, and you asked us the same thought I had, and maybe I'll even add to that is compatibility is one of those things. Sometimes he will meet Brett and I now, and they're like, oh my gosh, it seems like it must be so easy because we really are kind of harmonized, and it's because we really actually are quite different, but we found a way to really harmonize our strengths and bring them together so that our differences, initially is what attracted us to each other in a lot of ways. And then it also became the greatest source of conflict once, we were a few years in. And so now we've been so intentional about how to take the unique gifts inside of each one of us and bring them together in a way that just lifts both of us up and strengthens our relationship. And then I would say using it to serve the world. That's always for me just the end goal of any challenge I go through. It's I want to heal and grow and learn from it. And then I want to offer it up, of service to humanity. So we never anticipated that we'd actually be helping other couples. That was not what our plan was if you asked us 20 years ago. And once we had our own transformation, it's we can't not share this with the world because so many people are suffering in their relationships. So it just feels like such an honor and such a joy to get to share it. And I'd say that is that we get to use our love to hopefully spread and expand more love in the world for other couples.
That's beautiful. And I one reason I love it, I'm smiling big if you can see it ear to ear, and I think my wife is as well. We are doing the same thing. It's
Yes.
our goal. And if I had to say it a little bit differently, is we did after 20 years of marriage, we were in a spot where we said, "Gosh, everything looks great and it kind of feels okay from the outside, but man, we're not happy. We're not filling each other up. We weren't doing the work on the relationship. We were focused pretty individually, and then wondering why the heck isn't this what we want, need, or expected." And so we had to do the hard work, and now we're back in what I would call the rolling boil, right? Of satisfaction and romance and joy because we're doing the work, and it's not easy, but it is so worth it. And what we're doing now, the purpose of this podcast is to promote our uniqueness in the service of others, and to bring people like you and Brett on that can talk about what works, what doesn't, in an effort to bring everybody up to the same level. 'Cause we both of us really believe that each individual has the capability and is deserving of a relationship that's incredible.
Yes.
And we want to, our goal is to help more people figure out what they have to do to get there.
Yes, and sharing your experience brings a lot of hope to others who are in, very difficult or desperate situations. So, I want to take us back a little bit. I want to talk about your histories because I believe that they really play into our relationships. They, how love was modeled to you both when you were younger really does show up in your experience now. And so, Brett, let's start with you. What did love look like in your household when you were growing up, when you were a child?
Yeah. So in my family, it was really well-intentioned people, like good people that really struggled. So I tend to refer it to as the typical dysfunctional family. And there was kind of alcoholism, in my family and with my father, and there's some very kind of inappropriate behaviors as far as infidelity going on. And so, but at the same time, it's they really loved each other, and like my parents, and were actually a good match in a lot of ways. Just a lot of emotional immaturity and addiction problems. So that definitely jaded me on marriage. I remember being a teenager and basically telling myself I'm never getting married, right? Having those moments, which was part of my process. But yeah, and I know that was Christine mentioned that we're different in many ways, and this is one of the ways that we're very different.
Sure. And did you talk about those things before or, when you and Kristen were dating, when you first came together? Did those issues come up and did you work through those?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, I find that, right, based on the mistakes of our parents or elders, like we can either kind of go the route of I follow in those footsteps, or it's like I learn from those mistakes, and I almost like go in the opposite direction, and that's really what I did. It's like I was able to, like learn those lessons of like I never want to be this way, so like those, most of those mistakes like I've actually never done in my life and I never will, and that so this is like one of the things of turning our pain into gold, right?
Yeah. How about for you, Kristen? How was love modeled in your household?
Well, I am definitely abundantly fortunate. My parents have been together over 50 years. They're high school sweethearts and they're just totally devoted to each other. I mean, they are each other's best friends. And, they have their own journey and they haven't really shared, much about their own challenges. Growing up, though, they always presented as like such a united front. Like they are best friends, they are each other's just priority. And our family was just really at the heart and center of our lives. And so I definitely got, an extraordinary amount of secure attachment growing up and so much love. And I'm so incredibly grateful. And there are just like different things of imprints around love, that I noticed that was part of our learning curve is, just this is, for example, that I'm thinking of right now is my parents have a tendency to worry out of their deep love, worry about us like growing up. So say I would go, out with my friends, my mom would stay up on the couch and she would be worried, about me until I got home. And still now, even if we call and it's not a usual time, they're like, is everything okay? And so that is like love meant that you worry. If you love someone, you like worry about them. And so I remember coming into a relationship with Bret and he like didn't worry about me. And I remember like that was like a conscious thing that like maybe he doesn't really love me. Like he doesn't really care. He's not really in it because I would, if he was off on a road trip and he would get in, I'd want him to like call and check in. So it's still, my parents they had so many rituals and ways of checking in and expressing love that it was still a process, even though I'm really, really just grateful the depths of my being for what was modeled for me, it still took like some cultural like unhooking from like what love meant and not misinterpreting and misunderstanding some of Bret's actions, thinking that it wasn't love because it didn't show up how my parents, loved us.
Yeah. And we'll sort of break that apart a little bit later. I think we'll go into more depth with that. But what's your next question?
Yeah, we have 14 pillars, and of those 14, we have three that we call the three C's, and we think those are really foundational in any relationship. And those three C's are commitment, communication, and conflict resolution. And we both feel pretty strongly that commitment's kind of the cornerstone of any relationship. If you have commitment, it's the first thing that goes in place. You're able to build whatever you want. But if that commitment is not clear or strong or set in stone, so to speak, it really can show up in a lot of challenging ways later. So, Christine, I'd love to know, what does commitment look like to you in your relationship with Bret? Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. and let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship.
Commitment is huge. I love that your pillars are so wonderful. Well, I would say like our relationship transformation really came from that commitment. So that was kind of Bret, referred to that moment that we realized the relationship was no longer bringing out our best. And it really was a night on the couch that I'll never forget, where we turned and faced each other. We're like, gosh, I don't know if this is really working, and we realized like we had three paths. We could either like bless each other on our separate paths. We could just kind of keep doing things how we'd always been doing them in hopes that maybe it would get better, or we could make a powerful commitment. And the commitment wasn't necessarily like we're going to stay together indefinitely. We weren't married at that point. The commitment was, let's dive in and learn everything it takes to create a thriving relationship and base our decision on that, rather than, this moment of difficulty we were in. We're like, maybe this doesn't reflect the totality of who we're capable of being together. So let's at least commit to going all in. And so that was a good turning point. And now we just absolutely believe that thriving relationships really are like our own relationship is a matter of committing and recommitting over and over and over again. And so, it's been different things, when we would, now thankfully we've just been practicing this so long that difficult moments are actually pretty few and far between, which, conflict is totally healthy and okay. Things are pretty ease-filled anymore. And so, there were so many moments though, in difficult moments for sure. It's like, okay, we'd be in a difficult moment and then it's like, okay, I recommit. A commitment that we love is like, I recommit to being, allies and teammates with you, or just like recommitting to showing up in a way, in whatever way the relationship needs for me. And so I think that's it for me, is like, our relationship requires continual nurturing. So we try to stay a bit proactive now. So I think that's the commitment, is like I can catch even just like a little glimmer if our relationship, if we're not as connected as I know we're capable of being. It's like, okay, I want to recommit to prioritizing the relationship. Like life is really busy. So now it's like a committing to making our relationship something that we put in before everything else.
Sure. And is when you say the word recommit, is that an internal dialogue? Or are you saying to Bret, I want to let you know I'm recommitting, or I recommit to? And what kind of dialogue was that, in your own mind, or was that words that you actually had with each other?
Such a good question. So it's been both. We actually say it out loud quite a bit. Let's recommit to like making our relationship the most important thing. Or so internally for sure, my morning meditation kind of every morning is really about like, okay, recommitting to like what matters most to me and how I want to show up to Bret, to just for life. And so that is a bit of like my morning practice, is like that recommitting, which is that's more of just an internal, more of like a spiritual practice of mine. And we certainly say it out loud, perhaps more than maybe is typical. Is like, okay, I recommit to like connection and love and joy. Like we'll even be out on a walk and maybe we'll start talking about work stuff. We love our work so much. And it's like really important for us to unplug and just focus on other things. And so like, oh, okay, I recommit to like, let's talk about, tell me more about what you're feeling about this other thing. And so I would say a combination. And we definitely do use that statement out loud because we, like you, are just enthusiasts for the power of committing.
We find there's a power in speaking the affirmation out loud.
Sure.
Right. How about you, Bret? What does commitment look like to you in your relationship with Christine? What would you add to that or share from your own perspective?
I really like your 3 C's, by the way. One of the things that we discovered when we had like our crossroads moment and we decided to like go all in on our relationship is we discovered that there are like a predictable 5 stages of a relationship. And, that if we don't understand that, like we lack the ability to accurately assess like what stage we are in the moment and what our goal was and the steps to get there. So like I mentioned, like the first stage is romance stage, or limerence would be another word for it. And that's where like the beginning of a relationship where it's easy. And then the power struggle, which is like when our needs are coming into conflict with each other. And that's where like so many people, and that's where we were when we were questioning, should we stay together, right? We were in the power struggle. And when we realized that, all the good stuff is on the other side of that, right? And it all starts with commitment. So that kind of third stage of a relationship is commitment, where we really identify like, what does this relationship need from me to thrive? And then the growth stage is kind of where, we develop that in ourselves and in our dynamic together. And then thriving is the kind of the goal and the last stage. So, but everything pivots on commitment, right? It's like we need a commitment mindset. We need, to be, kind of committed to our relationship. Often, like more important than I'm committed to my individual needs.
Yeah.
Sure.
I love hearing all this because I feel like a huge percentage of our listeners find themselves eventually at a crossroad in their relationship. And if you can dive in and invest and really be willing to work on it, and like you said, be proactive, don't be reactive. You can just hit euphoria. It's amazing what can happen in your relationship when you're all in.
I think it's a great example of commitment from both of you. And I love, Brett, when you talked about the personal accountability, is that I'm accountable for what I've got to do for the relationship. You didn't say what I've got to do for myself or what I'm going to get out of it, but you said the relationship. And
It's the we.
it's the us. So there's I and you, but then once there's marriage and that lifetime commitment, right, it's us. And so you go, well, is this the best decision for us? I may not like it. It may not be what I think I want, but gosh, I can see it just really benefiting the relationship. So we're going to do it. And I appreciate the distinction that you made in that. Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about communication, because communication is really sort of what drives a relationship, I think. And we can talk to each other, and that's communication, but I'm talking about real communication, real connection with each other. Christine, what does communication, or how does it show up in your relationship?
Yeah, so important. And it's definitely been a skill, to learn and how to specifically communicate in those moments that are more emotionally charged. I think most of my life, like connecting with a friend or someone else, right, that kind of flows easily. And with Bret, around those more emotionally charged conversations, what has been so meaningful for me as a term that kind of came to us, that we now we first applied all these things to our own relationship, that we now share with others, is like wonder and look under. And so I'm just so thankful that our like having more vulnerable conversations and learning all the communication tools we have has like allowed me to understand, for me, even like what's going on underneath whatever my reaction might be. Like, what are actually the deeper fears I have there? Like, what are the deeper longings or the unlived dreams or whatever it might be? So uncovering that for me and learning how to communicate, the kind of curiosity is like, okay, how do I communicate this in a way that allows Bret to hear me? That's been like my big thing. If I ever feel like Bret isn't listening, it's like, okay, how can I make this more digestible and not flood him or whatever it might be, is learning how to communicate. And then with Bret, it's like listening, so that I'm not listening with like my listening filters of how I'm right and he's wrong or whatever it is. It's like getting out of my head and dropping so passionately into his heart and wanting to understand and understand, like, maybe I'm seeing this and I'm interpreting in one way, but underneath it, oh my gosh, there's something so much more tender and so much more precious. And so it's like, for me, communication has been about developing X-ray vision over, these 20 plus years. And so when I see, like, for example, if Bret, maybe what I would perceive was like checking out a little bit, and I would interpret that as, well, he must not care, and then I got to understand underneath it, he felt unappreciated. He felt like he couldn't get it right. And so it's like, in having those conversations and being able to communicate, then I can respond actually to like the preciousness and to the heart of what's really there, rather than, reacting to his own reactions with my reactions. So communication has been so big in order, I think, to really meet each other's deepest needs and feeling completely seen and understood. And I'm just so grateful. Like, I feel exponentially more seen by Bret than, anyone on this planet. And so we do have lots of, that's kind of in navigating the more delicate things. And then otherwise, where communication is just what keeps us connected emotionally. We have different prompts we use. So one, we just had a date night Friday night, and one, this is not original to us, that we learned years ago, is using the acronym PIES, which is how are you physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. So we went out for dinner, and then we took a walk, which we love taking long walks all the time. And so okay, let's do a check-in with PIES. I want to hear how you are, even though we spend every day together. It's amazing when we do those kind of more emotionally connecting conversations. So yeah, there's so much I could say, but those are little snippets.
That was great. How about, do you have anything to add to that, Bret?
Well, we've worked with countless clients over the years, and for the last 12 years, pretty much solely couples. And the number one thing that people come in and say that they need help with is communication. And I think, and then what we discover is actually they're really good at communicating. They're struggling with prioritizing each other's needs in that communication, right? They're struggling with having a positive affect with each other, right? They're struggling with putting the relationship first, instead of their own ego, and so that the communication tools that kind of really, I think, helped me tremendously to be a much better person in this relationship it was really about kind of being more present and being a better listener, and to really kind of take my opinions a lot less seriously.
Yeah, that is such a huge part of communicating, is just listening, being that active listener that really just closes their mouth and just truly tries to listen to understand.
Yeah, and have some empathy and, put yourself in their shoes and, that leads to understanding, right? If you're listening effectively and really seeing where they're coming from, then you understand them. And when you've achieved understanding, it's not agreement necessarily, but understanding, it brings you closer together, even if you're not coming from the same viewpoint. And I think I love you sharing that example. And so we talked a little bit about commitment and communication. Of course, they're inexplicably intertwined. But then there's that conflict resolution, that next C. And I don't care if anybody tells you in the relationship they have absolutely no conflict. I think then their nose might be growing just a little bit, because we have those unique perspectives, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense, or we don't understand, or it's tough for us to accept something that someone else may actually think and feel or even assign to us. So, how do you guys, when there is conflict or disagreement, what do you do to navigate that so it ends up not having a negative impact on the relationship? How do you guys navigate that successfully?
Yeah. Well, so for me, it was really helpful, I think, to normalize conflict, to make sure that I had the right expectation in my mindset of in our relationship, and to realize that conflict is growth waiting to happen, right? And that hammering together two very different people, in some ways very similar, some ways very different, right? That's just not going to always be a super graceful path. And so I'll reference Gottman's work. So I found that to be really helpful. To understand that John Gottman, one of the kind of great relationship research pioneers, through the Love Lab kind of research, determined that just kind of analyzing the data of how couples were interacting with each other, and over decades, kind of following those couples and seeing how their interactions right kind of created trajectories that either set them up for failure or success over decades. That the optimal amount of conflict or kind of stressful conversations, we'll say, was about a 20-to-1 ratio. So if we're about 5% of the time kind of like processing our relationship and talking about difficult stuff, that's maybe, anywhere from a little stressful to maybe like even a bit heated, that is actually a healthy amount and, of conflict, and maybe, maybe we could even reframe it as like from conflict to just like more stressful conversations. And so, and without that, actually, Gottman's research showed that those couples you referenced that like never fight. Well, there are couples like that, and actually they don't do very well long term, right? Like there's at some point, it's like, oh, we got divorced because it's like we just weren't, we just grew apart or something, but what really happened was that things weren't working in the relationship, that they didn't give themselves permission to really confront and to address. And we do that at our peril.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, I mean, there's so many different things for us. I am so grateful for the acronym HALT. That's definitely been, a key one. So HALT is like not having conversations and you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So now even what we'll do, if it's like late at night and maybe I'm or Brett's bringing up something from the day, and we're like, wait, this is a HALT moment. So now we like realize that, and just even saying like, this is a HALT moment, like, let's talk about it tomorrow. We realize like, oh my gosh, it's going to look totally different tomorrow. So I think we like catch each other, in the moment. So I'd say HALT moments are a moment that like, we definitely catch each other, catch ourselves and just name it for what it is. And I'd say having those conversations, what's been really important, that's really kind of been at the forefront that I know I try to hold, and I so feel that in Bret as well, is when we're navigating conflict, is that we maintain holding each other's best intentions. So even if there's like emotional charge, leading with, I know you were just trying to whatever it is. And so like acknowledging that there was like goodness in there. And then also what's been so helpful is not just talking about what didn't work. It's like, next time I would just love it if you would, whatever it is, like allows us to feel, I think both of us, like we can still succeed rather than like going too much and like over, well, this happened, no, this happened. It's like, okay, I know you were just blah, 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 and here's what I'd really love next time. And then for me too, I think what's so helpful is, the more vulnerable I can get, like rather than blaming Brad or criticizing him, it's like, okay, what was I actually scared of? This is something, in the early parts of our kind of relationship transformation, we learned this concept that like when there's conflict or when there's, we're triggered, it's like we're ultimately scared of something. And I realized like, oh my gosh. And so I would just start saying, I'm scared. Rather than going into, story, I would just start revealing, like what I'm actually scared, like something really important, feels threatened. And so that's been helpful for me, just uncovering like what's actually underneath it, doing like stepping back so that when I come to Bret with something, I have a lot more insight into what's really present for me. And then we definitely believe in just like radical responsibility of looking at, how am I creating this? So even when we need to have the more difficult conversations, it's bringing some level of responsibility and just like holding each other in highest regard, and trying to sprinkle in some appreciation as well.
I love all of that. I especially like it when people do talk about the HALT acronym, because I think it rings so true that we should not have difficult conversations if we're any of those things. And, it just we'd go to bed at late at night, and, we'd be laying there and all of a sudden I'd want to just have an intense conversation, and he wouldn't. And, he'd had a long day, and I just took it so personally. It was just, I would be really crushed by that. But it wasn't until we could actually talk about, okay, there are times that we're going to need to table things, and we're each going to have to be okay with that, because there are a lot of people who can't table things. And so I think that that's great for our listeners to hear that halt is important.
Yeah, timing is critical.
It is.
It's gotta be timing's gotta be right for both of you. And
Absolutely.
so timing and no booby traps. It's not like, hey, I need to talk to you about this thing that's really charged right now. And catching your partner off guard. Well, I don't want to talk about that issue right now. We can talk about it, but let's do it at another time when I'm a little more prepared to think and be present and focus on this. And that's okay. It's just another way of expressing needs. And I think that people have to learn it's okay, even around charged issues, as we've been talking about, to make sure the timing and the setting is right and everybody's prepared to have that good discussion so it can be fruitful, as opposed to feeling forced to respond in the moment.
So true. I've learned that from learning what doesn't work. Being in the living laboratory to now realizing, yes, no, so beautifully put.
Yeah. Well, after we've been married for a little while, we've been together, sometimes the intimacy fades a little bit. And so that's another area that we have to be cognizant of and that we have to really put an effort into. And so how do you all keep the passion and the intimacy alive in your relationship? And Bret, I'm gonna ask you to go first on that.
Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now, so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today.
Well, thank you. Yes. Well, this is one of my favorite subjects. And as part of a thriving marriage, I think, I think so much of this stuff, is like, starts with our mindset about it. And when we realize that, sex and affection, right, is such an important part of a thriving long-term relationship. Like the physiological component of touch, of affectionate touch, of sensual touch, sexual erotic touch, right? Without that, right, it's like we're missing part of the kind of biological component that keeps us connected and keeps us vibrant. And so just knowing that, right, having an intellectual knowing of that is like, it's like if it's, you're entrepreneurs and we are, and it's easy to get busy, right? And we love the dual control model of kind of sexual, where it's, sexuality or libido, where there's like brakes and accelerators. And when you get really busy, right, that can really kind of put on the brakes on our libido. And so it's like, when we go, like a week without, let's say, being sexual, it's like, like our marriage needs a vitamin, like our marriage like really needs this, it's like, we think of like, touch in all forms as like those kind of relationship vitamins that we need to kind of stay, really, really vibrant and healthy.
Sure. Christine, do you have anything you'd like to add to the intimacy aspect of your relationship?
Yeah, I'd say one of the things that's been most helpful for me, like Bret was saying, kind of mindset wise, just understanding it differently, is the contrast between responsive desire and spontaneous desire. So just if anybody's not familiar with that, spontaneous desire might be like when you first fall in love, there's just this rush of like desire to be with your partner. Whereas responsive desire might be like, once you are physically intimate or lovemaking, whatever, experiencing physical affection, it's like, oh, now my body's responding. This feels good. I want to continue. And so for me, it's just been so important not to wait for moments when I feel these big fireworks or like this big rush of desire, insatiable desire. It's me knowing that this is so important. It's totally like a vitamin, it is medicine. Like there is something for me actually having that intellectual understanding of the chemicals that are released and how bonding it is. And it just feels like, oh my gosh, our spark is bright. Like it's something that is so important to both of us because of like, there's countless benefits. Everything feels more ease filled. And of course, it's so enjoyable. And it's like me realizing, like, okay, commit to this, knowing that once we engage in that way, like I'm actually going to feel desire then. And so just when I first learned this idea that, rather than thinking like I feel desire and then I feel aroused, like going in that order, that it can be reversed, like feel arousal and then that leads to desire. And if I simply just wait to feel the desire, I might be waiting a whole lot longer. And so that's been so helpful. It's just like, oh, it's kind of a non-negotiable in some ways in our relationship because of all the incredible benefits that come from it. And then we just keep getting curious, like how do we make this as pleasurable as possible for both of us? And I so appreciate just, what we've learned about how like connection is the most important rather than there being like pressure around it. It's like, oh, we know we are going to feel so much more connected. And I've fallen so in love with how connected I feel to Bret. Like I know viscerally the proof is undeniable. Like everything is better, when we're tending to that part of our relationship. So I'd say it's the commitment piece. Like it is just such a commitment we both have.
And are you able to verbalize those desires with each other? Because I think that's where a lot of people fall short. They don't talk about it. It's like taboo.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And this is where, we would love to empower the world to have a sex positive perspective, right? Where we give ourselves permission to make requests around our sexual desires and needs. Yeah. So important.
Love that. All good stuff. You guys are giving us some terrific relationship gold today, and it's like mining and finding all kinds of big gemstones. I love it. So we do have 11 other pillars. We've talked about 3, but I would like each of you to kind of take a look at that list and look at those other 11. And Bret, I may ask you to start first. Which other one of those pillars jumps out to you and is important to you, and why?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go with trust and honesty. And yeah, yeah. So I'm going to go with trust and honesty. I think I reference my family of origin and some of the kind of the issues that I grew up with. And, where trust and honesty were not happening. And, I saw, I experienced the wreckage and the devastation, that kind of came from that. And, so I made a really, big commitment, like within myself of like, I have to be totally honest and have like the highest level of integrity in, my romantic relationships. And that, I would say, when we look at kind of like the trajectories of like, what sends us off in certain directions, it's like that was critically important, for me.
How about you, Christine? What other pillar jumps out at you, and would you say that you would focus on?
Appreciation's the one that jumped out to me. So that's been one of the kind of cornerstones of our relationship. We have a ritual where we express appreciation to each other pretty much every single evening. And I am still to this day, like every day, just in awe of how I would miss things if we didn't have that practice. And it has been so paramount because in Bret expressing appreciation to me, it amazes me how there are so many things that I would have had no idea he appreciated. Like I just didn't even know it mattered. Like that meant something to you? Okay, well, I can keep doing that. And I think if I didn't hear it, it would just be easy to let those things fall away. And so that's been just so encouraging and motivating. And then when I express appreciation to Bret, I continually have the idea of like, I'm scanning the day for what there is to appreciate, even if it's the same thing I've appreciated 500 times before. It's like, oh, I like wake up in that moment. I'm like waking up to like the abundance of blessings that Bret brings to my life that in the fullness of life, I just would otherwise miss. And so I am so grateful in expressing appreciation to Bret. My heart fills. I just like fall in love with him over and over and over again. And it's just so humbling to recognize like how many things I would miss in our everyday life that's like actually going well, and like how he's showing up for us. And, during especially, working together, it's so easy to go into like task mode. And so appreciation has just been the antidote to that for me, and just not going into like what needs to be better or fixed or logistics. It's like zooming out, and it just keeps me connected to the big picture and keeps us so connected. And we feel seen then for how we want to be seen, how we want to show up. It's like just so bonding, and we do it at night. And so it's like just the best feeling that in those like 5 minutes, we end the day feeling connected. It's been one of the most important decisions we made, is like having that ritual. So it's trained me to be on the lookout. I mean, certainly it has spilled over beyond those moments.
Yeah, it's such a simple but powerful exercise, because it builds that muscle of looking for what each other does right every day.
Yeah.
Love that.
We talk about showing up for each other. And so I really believe that there's some self-care that has to take care, that has to come into play before we can show up for others. So, Bret, do you have a non-negotiable self-care practice that you do so that you can show up and be your best for Christine?
Yeah, thank you. I do. I work out on a regular basis, and I just have to do that. Like, for my mental health more than anything, but also, physical health. And so it's like I wake up early, earlier than Christine 3 days a week, and which often kind of wakes her up before she would want to wake up, and it's and I'm usually like super sensitive, right, to those kind of things, where it's like I want to accommodate her greatest life, but on those kind of 3 mornings a week that I wake up to early to work out, it's like I know I have to do that, right? Like that's like the me kind of taking a check out of the love account, so that I can put in more deposits, so it's like.
Christine, how about for you? Is there a self-care practice that you have that is non-negotiable?
Yeah, I'd say my morning practice. It is just it doesn't matter where we are or traveling or what's going on, having those moments of quiet just to connect and get centered and aligned and get filled up spiritually and kind of nourishment. That's just in life, kind of with all areas of life, that's a bit of a non-negotiable to me. And certainly it spills over to the relationship in all areas.
Of course.
Yeah, we have those as well. And I love to hear that you're taking the time to make sure you're your best so you can show up for the one that matters most to you. You guys have been terrific. You've been open and sharing and transparent and giving us such great relationship feedback from your own real experience. So thank you. And if people want to learn more about the two of you and what you do, where should they go?
Yeah, well, so we founded over a decade now the Center for Thriving Relationships. So if you search Center for Thriving Relationships, we would probably come up. Otherwise, you can abbreviate it and go to centerthrive.com, and you can learn more about our coaching and counseling and courses. And we do a weekend retreat, and then we now train others to become relationship coaches, which is such an honor. And on social media, we definitely hang out on Instagram quite a bit. So you can find us there at Center for Thriving Relationships as well. Yeah, we'd love to stay connected in any way.
And thank you for what you two do. Like, I just really, really love your work. And I like that you do it from an Airstream, I think. And
Yes.
Yeah, this is Phoenix, and this is her name. It's our second trailer. The first one we had burnt last summer to the ground. We go to Maine in the summer and we work from up there. So we'll be leaving in a couple weeks. And so this is the replacement since last summer in Phoenix. And we do all of our podcast interviews from here, and we travel. So
I love it. I've seen the cars go by in the background, and I'm just, it's wonderful.
Yeah. No backdrop, no green screen, I promise.
Just natural.
Yeah. So thank you for being with us today. We look forward to sharing this, and can't wait to connect with you guys again soon.
Yeah, thank you both. I've enjoyed speaking with you and appreciate your authenticity and the work that you all are also doing service to couples. So we share the same passion.
We so do. It is a special connection we share. So thank you both so much for who you are, your relationship. It's just so undeniable, the love and the intention that you've poured into it. And I think it's just so inspiring and so contagious and wonderful to be around other couples who are committed to having these thriving, conscious relationships.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take care.
We'll see you guys soon.
Okay, you too. Thank you both so much.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.